super excited today. We've got two of my favorite people joining us, Shay Johnson and Mr. Tim Sackett. We are going to talk about scaling your recruiting. So as we let everybody in here, Chris, I'll let you kick us off.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Chris Russell. I'll be your moderator for today's JobSync Recruitment Marketing Roundtable. Our topic, like Leah said, is scale your recruiting impact with people, process, and technology, and where AI fits into all of that. Our guests are Shay Johnson of Compass Group and Tim Sackett of HRU. We'll get to them in a second. As always, we're joined by Alex Murphy, CEO of JobSync, and of course, Leah Daniels, Chief Commercial Officer. So say hello, Alex. Just joined us.
Hello, Alex.
And Shay Johnson is the VP of Strategic HR Partnerships at Compass Group USA. Hello, Tim. Hello, Shay. And Tim Sackett, Mr. HR Famous, dialing in from Michigan, I assume.
Yeah, I am.
All right.
Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, Leah's going to kick us off with the first question today. We have a bunch of questions from the audience. And shall we get rolling, Leah?
Yeah, so welcome everybody. As Chris said, welcome to our roundtable. A couple things. We will have two conversations going, at least the one that we're actively engaged here, but we'll also have one in the chat. So please feel free to jump into the chat, ask questions, contribute through that as well. Today's topic is really about scaling your recruitment impact with your people, your process, your technology. And when I think about technology, we have to think about AI as part of that conversation. So where does it fit in? Where does it not fit in? All those good things. As Chris mentioned, we had lots of questions submitted. We're going to try to tackle some of those. We definitely cannot get to all of them today, but I think just to get us started, before we jump into the details, I think we need to solidify a couple of terms because we're getting people throw these things around all the time. What do we mean when we're talking in this context about people, about process, about automation, about technology, about AI? Where do the lines start and end in each of those categories? And I would love for either of you guys to jump in and start. Like, just give us how you think about them so we can then have this conversation around how to make it all faster, better, smarter, quicker.
Tim, are you tackling this first? Or
Go ahead. I'll
Oh,
join.
wow, that was, you guys are, I warned you two this was coming.
Yeah. Well, there's so many terms there, Leah. Which one's, I mean, I guess I'm not going to sit here and define terms, but yeah, like for me, it's just a conversation that gets had every day because in a lot of organizations, people, especially that are really into new technology and they're constantly want to solve problems with the newest and the best and the brightest. They're always thinking technology first instead of going back and really revisiting their processes, right? So the way that I think of it is like your process is, the system of tasks or requirements that you need to accomplish a goal, right? It's leading to something that you need to get done. And I think that in this conversation we'll get into it, but there's always too much of a focus on we need technology or we need automation or we need to leverage AI without first looking at the process and saying, does this process exist solely because it was created out of the technology that we've been using for the last 10 years. So that you run into that a lot, especially in large enterprises like ours, where there's a mindset and a language, and it's all built around a process that was dependent on technology for the last, iteration of what you've been doing. So I think we'll probably get into that discussion a lot today is like what technology or what automation or what uses of AI are really serving a new and better purpose or helping you invent or refine or simplify processes, instead of just layering something on to the thing that you've always done and the way that you've always done it.
Yeah, it's a really common situation, right? Where you buy technology and it has its own sort of process and its own limitations. And so you change your business to support that. Life moves on. The technology may change, or you may get newer, different technology, and yet you keep the process the same because that's the way we were doing it. And then somebody new walks in and goes, "Why do we do that? Like what?"
Yeah. Why do we do step 1 and 3? And you're like, well, 10 years ago. I do think there's part of me that like process is how we get work done, regardless if we have technology layered in or not, so that we always have this kind of functional way of doing our work, even if the electricity got turned off, right? Like I can still hire somebody. There's a document, blah, blah, blah. We'll figure out a way to do this. In today's world, is probably not legitimate, right? In terms of getting somebody onboarded and payroll and all that stuff. Like if you don't have access to your technology, it's probably not going to happen, which goes to what you said, Leah, which is so often we're buying SaaS software with a predetermined process that's built around it's the most effective way to use it. And then too many of times, like, and Shane, I've seen is that you buy SaaS software and then someone tries to break the software by jamming their crappy broken process into a software that isn't designed to do that. And then we get frustrated. For me, automation is just something that is going to make us do something faster, more efficient. And then AI could be automation, but it doesn't have to be automation. There is a lot of this AI that is kind of automation-like. When you think of like conversational apply and some automated scheduling, things of that sort, there's AI layered in there, but AI doesn't have to be automation, right? So like that's the hard part of answering that question, because it's like even like the tech stack in TA today is there's so much overlap between sourcing and CRM and ATS and all the pieces that we have. It's hard to tell what one thing is from the next.
And Tim, to your point, I would just add to that, because I know we'll get into the AI discussion a lot today, but it's kind of like early AI, and a lot of AI today, right, is really just deterministic automation that supports an existing process, versus really new innovative use of AI is saying, hey, we can really rethink the need for a process or technology or automation altogether based on how we're using this to drive recommendations and outcomes that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things I've seen in the last few years is the rise of recruiting operations or technology operations, or pick your operations label, I don't care. And their ability to separate themselves from the technology for a moment to say, what is the process of our business that has nothing to do with our technology? Like, what is it that we need to happen from step A to B to C to D in order to get someone hired? Because my business might be different than your business. For example, we hire CDLs. So therefore, we're going to have a process that involves the Department of Transportation, can't get around that, which is different than we only hire restaurant workers, right? So that's a different process. We need them food safe certified. That's a different process. So how do we make sure we have our process, not our technology's process, not Bob that we hired last year, who's super cool, and he had this old process that he liked at his old companies, and now he's doing it here. Like, how do we get rid of all of that and get focused on what do we need, and then tie in our technology, and then tie in the automation, and then right? Like, is that a process that you guys, Shay, you see the business going through periodically? And Tim, I would love, because I know you get to get your hands on all sorts of people's business, what you're seeing.
Yeah, Tim's too in other people's business.
He is.
No, it kind of goes both ways, Leah. Like, initially, right, when we're trying to solve for something, and maybe we're doing discovery, and you're doing all the pre-analysis on potential technologies to solutions before you ever get to maybe an RFP or a buying situation. Yeah, you're getting really specific, right? Like, what are the requirements? What are we trying to solve for? But then layered in that, what we try to do is always have the forward-thinking vision, because it's going to take a while to implement something at scale with our organization. It's going to take a while to drive adoption. You want to be able to use it for enough time for it to have ROI and impact. So you kind of have to have this long-term thinking of, this is the requirement, or this is the desire right now, but I do want to seek out technology and partnerships that are flexible and adaptable, and we think are forward-thinking. And, this has more use to it than just the current requirement. So I think it goes both ways, where it's like, we do want to select something that's driving the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, but hopefully we select something that we think can, actually solve for much more than what we're just looking at today.
Or a company that will build it out, and you have confidence that they will or can, right? I think, Shay, to your point, is do they have that from that standpoint? Lee, I think we still have this issue where there's too many CHROs or TA leaders in our space that believe they're the unique butterflies and they need some customization. In reality, I think I seem like I can put name like 3 companies that are trying to build this themselves, and they're not unique at all. Like there's already great stuff that people have spent years building. Just use that. Why are you going through? You're trying to create something from scratch that is not even going to be to industry standard, and then you're still not going to have a team to support that moving forward. Like, it's the craziest thing in the world for me to think anybody does. And it's the biggest names in the world, right? It's the Amazons, the Walmarts, it's these, the top of the food chain think, oh my God, we're so, unique. We have to build something And you're like, no, you're not. Like, you're the opposite of unique. Like, you just need to build this giant hiring machine. And by the way, people have already built it and it actually works really well and it's been proven. So
I would
again,
say
why are we trying to do that?
I
Right.
think there's a conflation a little bit in some that happens where it's like, well, our hiring is unique because we hire for 6 different types of businesses and each one of them has its own thing. And they're right in that you probably can't take one thing out of the box and without doing any customization to it or configuration to it and make it just work. That's probably true. What I think your point probably is maybe you buy 3 things out of the box, or you buy one that's highly configurable, but maybe not build a a supercomputer solution that actually isn't that super or a
Yeah.
solution.
To hire like, $15 an hour people. Like, it's just not needed.
Yeah.
Configurability and customization are two different things, right? Configurability is, oh, I can name this, this thing what I want to name it, even though the software names it something else, versus saying, hey, I want you to break your process and jam my bad process into your software, which again, they will, because you're going to pay them, 6-7 figures and they want your money. So they'll break their software for you and they'll happily do it. You'll hate them, they'll hate you, and 3 years later you'll choose somebody else. Like, that's just the reality of the world we live in when you ask for customization.
You forgot about the acquisition part, Tim.
Oh yeah, or yeah, and they'll probably get acquired. And then you have a third vendor coming in saying, oh, for sure we'll do what you want because you're going to pay us and you'll hate us and we'll hate you.
This is driving towards really the question of scale, right? So yes, all of these things. But the question is now, if you are being tasked, and I feel like the entire TA leadership in at least the United States or probably US and Europe has been told, do more with less for the last 25 years. But we mean it this time. But we mean it this time. We really mean it right now. Like, how can you do more with less and scale, scale, scale? And Shay, I know this has been sort of a mission for you for a while. Like, did you sort of embarked on this process of how are we going to take our team, not add to it, but yet accomplish more? Where did you go? What was the journey?
Yeah. Well, that's an important distinction. I will say that the teams that I've overseen the past several years, like, we had an advantage in that we were already starting small. You hear a lot of like really cool success stories from vendors out there when you had a TA function that had overgrown and overinflated because of old process, right? And then they finally implement a new modern technology that's really innovative and they get to be like, we saved $2 million in this many hours because, well, great, you finally solved for something that had gotten too big. I was in a position where we had really small centralized teams, handling things in a way that was meant to be scalable from the beginning. It was a little bit by accident. It wasn't with that vision in mind. It was just sort of like where we started. But yeah, the idea, with Compass Group is we had a small centralized team, especially for the front line, the high volume recruiting. And as we brought more and more of our business on, it naturally would have made sense to say, okay, well, we're going to need another 5 recruiters, another 10 recruiters, another, 5 TA ops people, right? That would have been natural. But given that we're in primarily food service, hospitality, facilities, and it's a low margin business, everything in our business is that mentality of like, how can we scale? If we're going to grow at 10%, how can we only grow this part of the business by 1% or less? So that's always been our mentality. So from the get-go, as soon as we said, we're going to have a high volume, centralized, kind of front-end service model, our technology and our processes and our outlook and our adoption in the field of what we're doing needs to walk hand in hand with that. So I know it's hard for businesses that are trying to scale back and go through that transformation, but if you're at a point like we were, where you're saying, hey, we're really kind of getting a new piece of technology off the ground, or we're building a team out in a different way, that's what I would encourage you is like, start with that mindset, and then you really get wins all the time because you're like, we've sort of built our model to scale this way, instead of saying, oh my gosh, how do we reverse course on this huge thing that we've blown up? So I know that's not a perfect answer to where to start, but I've got some thoughts on the other side of that. Tim?
Well, Shay, like, what do you want me to respond to that?
It looked like you were nodding like you were going to say something there for a second. So I was like,
no, I just have heard your story. So I'm kind of nodding along of like, yeah, this is the way it should be done.
Well, I think, but to your point, Shay, for many organizations, right, the solution to the problem is throw bodies at it. right?
Has been. Yeah, it has been for sure. Yeah.
Has been for a really long time, right? Like, oh my God, what do we do? Throw bodies at it. Like, hire more people, quick. Hire temps, hire junior level recruiters, hire anybody to do something. And then you kind of get into that mode for a while before you realize that maybe that isn't a scalable solution.
This is where I go back to kind of the whole assess your process before you assess technology, right? Because if you're going to try to bring in technology to help you scale down, you're going to find that it's just as expensive as the bodies would have been, right?
Or
If you're
more.
not, yeah, or more. So that's what I'm saying is if you really take a look at, and these can be done in parallel, right? Like we're gonna select technology that's going to force us to rethink and enable a more scalable model, at the same time. But it's hard conversations to have, right? Because then you're really having to think about who is doing what and what does their job become and do I have the right talent in place to flex to that? But I mean, that's the simplest way that I can put it is I would never go out and say, we've got a body problem. It's getting out of control. We need technology to curb it. I would say like we need to really refine the way that we're doing things today and then seek out a technology that's going to help us stop the bleeding, like kind of stop where we are and be able to scale from there. And then over time, we can figure out if we can redeploy talent in a different way, let natural attrition kind of do its thing. And next thing you know, your team of 50 has scaled back down to 40, 35, and is settling into a comfortable balance, with the technology and the processes that you've adapted to.
Shay, what's one example of that? You just give me something specific there from Compass Group that you guys did to either save time or lessen the need for a recruiter.
Did you know that JobSync is the example? That's perfectly set up. No, that's great. Yeah, that was well played. If you
Well done, Chris. Well done.
I was like,
this
no,
is like word from our sponsors. No, truly, JobSync is a great example of that, where what the problem that we set out to solve for at the time was we had.
Hey, Chris Wellington, I'm going to mute you as soon as I can find you.
Found him.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Shay.
My mistake.
I got you. Yeah. So the problem that we were trying to solve for a number of years ago was that we had a huge amount of our business, recruiters included, going out and doing a lot of sort of rogue direct posting on big boards like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, you name it. And all we simply wanted to solve for was a better direct management of our jobs on Indeed, but instead of having them be that kind of redirect to our career site experience, we wanted to take advantage of sort of that native Indeed easy apply workflow, getting candidates directly into our ATS and all of our downline processes with other vendors and technology that we really wanted to get the best ROI out of. So, we set out trying to solve for more of like a work and a process and a compliance nightmare and an advertising spend. I mean, there were all these big business reasons that we said, hey, JobSync can help us solve for some of this. But what we didn't realize at the time, but we quickly adapted to, is saying, oh, hey, this is actually going to change the nature of the manual work that is being done, either by choice or by necessity, by a number of different players in this process. So as soon as we were implementing JobSync and seeing what was going to be controlled, what was going to be automated, what was really going to be handled by technology, we then said, well, here's a team of 10 people on the recruiting team that are mostly just handling job posting and refreshing and QA and advertising management. And now we get to free them up in a way that says, hey, and also in that same regard, like now we don't have to depend so much on programmatic advertising. So could we have these people really look into having more control and influence over the advertising strategy? So there's a lot that could go into that sort of, we could do a whole session just on that case. That was just one example of like, we put a vendor into place with good intention to solve for one problem, quickly realized it was going to free up people. And instead of saying like, okay, well, goodbye, it's been good. There was a real need to redeploy that talent to solve for 3 more issues that we could all roll into this one project. So when it came time to tell the ROI story up the line, we were actually hitting 3 or 4 different wins instead of just one.
Jay, you bring up a good point, because I think so many TA leaders, CHROs are getting pushed to test, to buy, to use AI, when in reality, it goes back to like your original question, which is, for the most part, they probably just need some automation, right? And be better there versus
AI automated intelligence.
Yeah, right. Versus kind of going through this entire process of like, hey, let's bring in something that potentially could put us at risk that we don't even know of. So it's like, let's go back to like blocking and tackling. Let's go back to making sure, right, we have the right automations turned on and are in use, because those could have like just giant low-hanging fruit ROI that's there. instead of going, oh, let's, figure out something that's going to like turn into a lawsuit. I don't.
Well, or I think one of the challenges for a lot of the TA leaders that we talk to is you're getting this mandate, use AI, and they're like, great, how would you like us to use it? Like, we don't know, but we definitely want you to use it. And they're like, okay, if I use it, how is it going to work? And so much of the AI tech right now is either nascent, right? So it's like every day, the vibe coding is a new thing for everybody. So it's a standalone, right? And Shay, you probably know this, but Tim, I know you know this. Like standalone solutions in a lot of recruiting teams are abandoned solutions, right? I have to go over here and do a thing entirely over here. So the ROI on that thing better be so astronomical that it's worth it for me to remember to go log in somewhere else and do a thing completely separate of my process and my tech that I'm already using. And I think that's a big piece that as the HR and TA leaders are being pushed into AI, they're like, okay, I bought an AI thing. Here you go, team.
Yeah.
Here's your thing. Forget
No,
the
it's like
compliance part, right? It's like they're not even using it because they can't even get it into their process.
Well, and it's not just, I mean, we're kind of talking about AI adoption, but the reality is it's tech adoption across, TA, really across every function of how do you ensure that, to me, goes back into the process. If I have a process and I'm going to use technology, I have to layer the process within each piece of technology that I have. Thus, people ask me all the time, like, Tim, how do you get your team to use your technology 100% adoption? And I'm like, because everything we do is measured, and it's measured through the technology and the technology partners we use through our process. So if I pull a report and it says, hey, this recruiter screened 22 people, and they're like, no, Tim, really, it was 30. Like, no, the technology says it's 22. And you chose not to use the technology for 8. Thus, you didn't do that because I'm paying for this technology because I believe that it's going to make us better in the long run. It might slow you up to begin with. It's classic kind of adoption stuff. But I mean, that's really what we're talking about is like, wait a minute, why did I buy something that I think is going to be valuable? Because it's always going to slow our teams down. Every recruiter bitches every time we get something new because they're like, it's not faster. You're right. It's not right now. Yeah. But 3 months from now, you'll never know how you lived without it if you'll just use it. I'm going to have to force you to use it as a condition of employment. And plus it's in our process, and I'm going to talk about it every single week. We're going to dig in. And I'm shocked that, TA leaders for the most part haven't figured that out in terms of how to interweave the process within the technology they use.
But I think it starts though with where Shay started. You have to write it down. What is your process? And when you evaluate, and one of the questions that we got in is like, how do you evaluate all these vendors? How do you evaluate? Well, the first thing you evaluate against is where does it fit in your process, and does it fit in your process? Or are you being asked to take a nice meandering road out to Canada on your way back to try to use this process, right? Like, does it work with what you already are trying to do in your business? And if it doesn't, is it because your process is bad or because the tech doesn't really work for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, remember, Leah, how I mentioned like a lot of times the process exists because a piece of technology that you're using has forced that, it's created this sidestep, or it's created the need to have to use an Excel matrix to reference because you haven't found a way to embed, right? There's all these sort of gaps that exist. So that's when all the AI stuff blew up like 2-3 years ago. That was one of the first things I did with the team is I sat down and I wasn't trying to implement anything. I wasn't trying to assess any vendors. I broke a team of 50 people into probably like 5 or 6 different kind of collective focus groups from different areas and just said, hey, I just want to have an open conversation about, what are the things that you do throughout the day that are taking up like a huge chunk of your day? Just pure time. I don't care if you enjoy it or you don't. Just like what takes up a lot of your day in your, a process or repetitive thing that you're doing. Could be just like we constantly get this email from hiring managers in the field. I'm just answering this question over and over all day. So it could be ticket related. And then I was just like, what if you had those 6 hours back in your day? What's the part of your job that you really love doing that you're not getting to do enough of, right? Like you're just posing the question about like, how's your job going? What do you like? What do you not like? And then you start to uncover what's taking up so much time, and you can get to the point of, is this an unnecessary thing that's a part of our process, but it's more of like a legal or a compliance requirement? Is this an unnecessary thing that just hasn't been solved with technology? Or is it something that has actually been created because of a piece of technology? So then to your point, Leah, when you're like, how do you go about evaluating the vendors? you're stack ranking all of those things and you're saying, hey, really, this could be automated or this could be taken away or this could be solved for. Maybe this is an AI play, right? And so you start to go out and say, if I'm not able to solve this with an existing partner or vendor, something that feels broken in the process or what these recruiters or what these, TA ops people are doing, well, now that's what I'm going to take into my evaluation process with the vendor is I'm going to start identifying and saying how many things could be solved for with the implementation of this product that takes all that stuff off the list of the HRS team of things we need to fix. It's like with one implementation all in one go, I'm going to solve for 6 to 20 problems that recruiters are bringing up. And now in one implementation, it's taken those things off the agile board.
Interesting is when you give the recruiters back that time, do they do with it what they said they were going to do, or does something else like water seep in and steal their time?
They get on Facebook for work and put in more LinkedIn posts. No, they don't. They literally, it just disappears. It's one of those crazy things in our life. Like I could give every recruiter 20 hours back in their week and magically they would still be as busy doing the same exact stuff, right? That's the hard part is like, I know right now I could build a stack for any recruiting shop that basically would fill every recruiter's calendar 8 to 5, 5 days a week with every half hour with a new screen of a potential candidate. I could do that right now. But like, again, would it take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before every recruiter would put a gun in their mouth? Because they're like, wait a minute, I just spent 40 hours just screening people all day, every day. And this is the rest of my life until the end of time. Like what's going on here? So we know we can't do that, even though the automation is there. It's easy enough to do.
Yeah.
And I've actually I've seen I was talking with a home health. What we don't do in our space is like time and motion studies. We do this in operations all the time, manufacturing. We look at what the person actually does. And when I go in and interview TA teams and dig in, I'm doing a little bit of that. And it's shocking at the waste of that, the process and what we do in terms of acquiring talent is, right? There's so much wasted time of, well, I reached out to Shay and then I had to reach back out to Lee because I'm trying to coordinate them calendars. And then Shay got back to me, but Lee went on vacation. So then I had to call and like, we're just like, what is this dance that we're doing when, again, we know AI and automation can actually do it much better. I think the big question is if I had that 6 hours, 10 hours, 40 hours, what could we do that we're not doing? Not what could you do more of, but totally reimagine of, hey, we don't have enough nurses. Why don't we have enough nurses? We don't have enough women in software engineering. Why is that? It's not because it was because we don't have little girls in elementary school that are being taught that, hey, this is really cool and you're really good at this. And then all of a sudden we're building this thing out. And so like if I was a TA leader in a marketplace where I needed more welders, more skilled trades, more whatever, nurses, can I get into the school system and start showing these kids like what this is? Can I get them into, instead of going to the alternate high school where they become a carpenter and they're immediately said, hey, you're less. How do we get this into their normal everyday protocol where you can still be the band person and the football player and want to be a carpenter, right? Like right now, you can't do that. You can't be a football player and want to be a carpenter because we're going to send you to the alternative high school. So again, if we start to rethink about, okay, well, how do we build talent? How do we attract talent? All of those things, it becomes a completely different conversation where what a recruiter looks like today versus the future is totally different. I'll give you a good example is there was a company that again, layered in a bunch of automation, bunch of AI. They were able to get rid of 15 recruiters, but instead of getting rid of the 15 recruiters, they deployed them out into the field to sit like literally office to office next to an operations leader. And their entire job was talent attraction, talent development, talent retention. So everything around talent. And the hiring leaders lost their minds. They thought this is the best thing ever that's happened in my career is because I don't have time to deal with all that, even though that might be the most important thing. Because I have to deal with all the operations stuff. I have to deal with getting the projects done and getting new projects and all the other stuff. I can't worry about, is Shay getting the development that he needs? Oh my gosh, Leah seems a little disengaged. Is she going to leave us? And now I have a person that's totally doing that. That's truly a talent advisor in role, not title, right?
Yeah, Tim, we had a question from the audience about that, which was what human elements or team structures are crucial for successful recruiting with fewer recruiters out there. That's one example, I think, you just mentioned there. Shay, do you have something like that that you guys did at Compass?
I was just going to kind of tap tap into that, because like Tim, you brought up a good point a while ago, which is like if you introduce automation, you introduce new tools, and great, the idea is we're saving you 6, 10, 20 hours a week, then what? Do people really use that time that they get back? And that was, like I said, if your intention of saving someone time is not just to save time, it's not just to improve a metric, it's to say, like I said, that conversation was like, well, what would we rather have them do with their time that they got back? I mean, there's two different ways you could go with it. We kind of talked about the scale thing, right? Leah, like you could say, okay, well, now we don't need 20 more bodies. Like the same number of recruiters can screen 3 times the amount of people or whatever it is, right? So there's just a productivity gain that you could use it for. What we did is we completely changed our service model. So it always used to be like, we need this many people clicking buttons, doing manual processes and tasks. And then once you introduce a certain level of automation and control, you're like, oh, wow, that actually gave me 4 people free or 4 hours for each recruiter back. And so now what we were able to do is say, hey, we normally have to say no to the business when they ask us, can you fly out a few recruiters? Can they help with my mass hiring event? We're opening a new airport lounge, or we're opening a new stadium. Can you send some people? Nope, we're too busy clicking buttons. We don't have time to do that. That's not within our SLA. Now we can. We're like, okay, let's send some people out there. I'd love to get feedback on how helpful it is to the business, et cetera, et cetera. You get that. Everybody loves it. It goes great. And you're like, great, let's continue to scale that. So we go from a model of highly administrative behind the scenes, not even really recruiters, just like rec ops, sort of low level admin roles, to all of a sudden people that are embedded in the business, people that are proactively on openings calls, people that are involved with the new business team 3 months before we're acquiring a piece of business. Like the role of the recruiter, and this is frontline people that we're talking about, it changed completely from like an admin, just sort of job posting, job management role into proactive, strategic, business advisors and in the field and helping with events, so that managers and HR partners in the field are like, oh, I can actually just spend the time with the client and I don't have to be doing any of this. Like I'm out on the floor with client and guests. I'm not behind a computer. You guys are actually helping with that. Whereas
More human interaction is what I'm hearing.
Jay, you know what's unique is that like 99% of all hiring that takes place in the world right now is still pretty much the exact same process, which is post a job gets marketed, somebody applies, we process them through, blah, 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 right? That's almost 99% of hiring. And if you ask the CEO, how does talent come into your company? They would not tell you that. They would say, oh my gosh, we have this great HR team, talent acquisition team that's hunting for the best people in our marketplace. Like, no, they're not. So like, I'm like going, but then how do you turn that in? How do you go into like an internal headhunting model? Because those metrics become completely different, because now you're like going, well, I might have to have 9 conversations with Shay over a year before he finally goes, crap, they really want me and I really want to go work there now because they think I'm prettier than my current employer. I mean, ultimately that's what we're doing, right? But we don't do that right now because we don't have the capacity to do it. But our CEO actually thinks that's what we're doing, which is laughable. And I get a chance to do both, right? I'll come in, help the TA team, and then I go and sit down with the CEO and go, tell me how talent comes in. And they look at you like you just asked them a question that's never been asked and they have no idea. And then you start to dig in and they're just thinking, oh my gosh, we're out there. I've been on CNN telling people we only hire the top talent. You're like, no, you hire the tallest of the 7 dwarfs that apply to your job,
It, what's interesting about that, Tim, is that against the current trend of skills-based hiring. Skills-based hiring, skills-based hiring, skills-based hiring.
That's vapor. It's awful.
Right. So
Vapor.
I mean, we all have skills.
Yeah, but am I 10 skills or a million skills? Like, come on. Skills hiring is vapor.
There's no universal skills text. I mean, like there's by the time an organization agrees and invents one.
If I was a CEO and my CHRO came to me and said, I'm doing skills-based hiring, I would fire them immediately. Get the hell out of here. By the way, we've always hired for skill. I mean, we've hired for experience. We've hired for education. We've hired the full human. But now we're going to just like go, oh, no, we're just going to hire Leah because we think she's good at technology. But maybe she's an awful leader of people. Like, who knows, right?
My AI resume says I'm amazing at technology.
For sure.
I'm so good. I used all the words that the AI came up with. But on that,
by the way, I think multiple vendors have told me
your job description.
Multiple vendors have told me that the only reason that their skills-based hiring was even invented was because they had all this data and they didn't have anything else to sell. And so they're like, well, we have all the skills data, so let's just sell this and we'll market it and we'll make it a big thing. And we know that HR people are dumb enough and technology unsavvy enough that they'll actually buy into it. And before they know that it's all vapor, they'll be fired from that job, even though they signed a 7-figure contract.
I wonder
Like
who
that
pioneered that
from the
phrase.
vendors, right? So I mean, like, come on.
And there's a human version of this that I used to teach a course with the person that very first hired me. It was called inclusive recruiting. But the whole principle of it was, instead of skills-based hiring, it was just like when you're actually looking at a resume or interviewing someone, how do you translate their experience that does not apply to this role into skills, that they, and I was like, that's what
Transferable skills
used to be. It was just translating experience into skills, not actually data that tells you a skill set or something that's going to chart a career path or capability.
I tell people all the time, I can like go out and tell someone like, oh, I'm hiring a software engineer for General Motors for our autonomous engineering group. Cool. I have 2 candidates that came to me. Their software engineering skills are exactly the same. We've assessed them. One is from Maytag. They made freaking washer and dryers. One is from Tesla. Who do you think the better person is going to be for that job for GM? Oh my gosh, experience matters. Like, this is like the dumbest thing ever. Like, it's not about just skill.
As we start to navigate into the next, call it 3 years, I feel like that's a long time in our current world, but 3 years, AI is not going away. It is going to continue to be part of the process that all talent and HR folks need to figure out how to evaluate, implement, and adopt. Shay, I know in your skills base of Shay, one of your key characteristics is you're insanely curious about these things. I know you're always noodling and poking and looking at stuff. How do you think about this, a process of considering technology and AI as you go forward in the next couple of years in relation to skills and in relation to scaling your business? Now we're talking about skills, in relation to scaling the business and the recruiting function.
Yeah, like I said, it goes back to we're never first of all, every vendor out there now is an AI company. Like we just changed from .com to .ai. Congratulations, you're an AI company. So like we're not going out and evaluating things on the AI play. And by the way, if you just added, a chatbot with a knowledge base onto your product, it's not an AI product now. Like I don't need 900 agents, in every single product that we evaluate or anything like that. So the point being is that like the way that we're looking at AI now is, we don't want 900 different tools that are AI tools or AI products. More than anything, it seems like we want there to be a continuous, first of all, when you think about an experience layer, right? Like there needs to be consistency to, okay, if this is how people are going to interact with AI in terms of they're actually interacting with it, can we make that experience consistent, across multiple different technologies? So again, it reduces that need to jump from system to system, and you truly have this kind of layer that not everyone's going to use, but a lot of people are going to gravitate towards. I mean, so there's that. But just in terms of evaluating vendors based on AI capabilities or where the AI strategy is, like I said, it's kind of the same way as you've always looked at any technology or any automation. It's like, is this actually solving a problem or bringing something new and valuable to the business, or is this just, wow, it's cool and flashy and fast, and you can interact with it conversationally instead of having to learn and adopt a software? So that is the one thing that I would say is valuable from like an AI, like a user perspective, is if you're like, okay, this is actually done in a really smart way where adoption will be higher because everybody knows how to ask a question or chat. And if they're actually able to get value out of the work that they can do in a conversational way versus, having to learn a whole suite of software, great. But that's rarely the case that someone's designed it that well.
Hey, Shay, answer me this. Like, when you think of all the tasks that we have to do as recruiters, highest ROI, lowest risk AI that you're buying as an HR leader within your company?
What I'm thinking really hard about, Tim, is like, what is it really AI?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
I will say like the one I hear constantly, which is kind of like zero risk, but high ROI, is scheduling, AI-based scheduling, right?
But is there AI in that at all?
Well, yeah, so that's where I would go back.
It's mostly automation, right?
like sprinkled?
But like,
here's the AI piece: is when somebody goes, "Hey, you reached out with this calendar, but I think you like," and it can actually ask questions and go back and forth, and it contextually knows, like, oh, okay, so I'm not supposed to set you up with this person, blah blah blah. I get what you're saying though, Leah, like for sure.
Well, like
I'd say
a
that
big difference, right, Tim, between like you're sending someone a Calendly or a HubSpot scheduling link, right? It's just choose your time versus Paradox and others that are like we're embedding scheduling into a flow of the conversation, right? The AI component of that is mostly going to be natural language process. It's going to be like the
Yeah.
ability to actually have a conversation, say, yeah, Tuesday works
It's
great for me, or can we reschedule for 3 p.m.? It's
super
that
low risk. Yeah.
that's the AI element of it, where it's like, yeah, this is super concentrated within this task, but it's mostly deterministic to say this person needs to be invited to schedule interview. This person has agreed to this time schedule. It's mostly deterministic automation, but there is a nice AI element because it makes the usability of it to someone that's not used to technology easy because you can just have a conversation or you could use more of like a form-based experience.
I have a follow-up question to this, this topic. How can AI be further leveraged to improve the efficiency of recruiting at the later stage of the process, guys? What do you guys think on the later stages of where AI could fit in?
I've seen it used again. The question is how much of this is AI versus just kind of AI like automation, which is like ghosting for for onboarding startups, stuff like that, in terms of nudge kind of technology, which to me, it doesn't have to be AI. The AI piece does come back to the conversational side of understanding when someone goes, oh, well, I can't start Monday. But instead of just ghosting, the AI can actually have the conversation of why. Why is that? I forgot, like I have an appointment or my kid starts school or whatever. Can I start on Tuesday? Instead of just like all of a sudden the person never shows and we think, oh, well, we have no idea why we got ghosted from that. I mean, I guess that's probably the latest stage, right? From the recruiting side. I still think the most underutilized, highest ROI is screening. If you think about how we use screening or how applicants get through right now, we have a tiny portion of applicants that actually get into the process. I would say 3 to 5% on average. And here's what happens. 100 people apply to a job, recruiter goes in, takes a look at 15, 20, screens a handful, sends them on to a hiring manager. Hey, here's the best that apply. 80% of those people never even got looked at. If I'm going to screen, I'm going to get 100% of them. Immediately, you're going to have a higher quality of hire just because statistically, you're going to go through all of everybody that applied. And you're probably going to actually hire faster. Do I want to send AI screens right to the hiring manager? No, I'm going to use that as a filter. I'm going to get to the highest ones that came out of that screen. And now I'm going to do a second level screen that's different than what the AI is asking from a recruiter standpoint. Ultimately, the hiring manager is going to go, holy crap, what happened to you guys? Because the people you're sending me now are way better. And it's like, well, because now we've engaged 100% of the people that are applying.
I think there's an interesting dichotomy happening right now. So candidates believe, not all of them, but many of them, that they're being screened out by AI today.
Yes. And they're not.
They're not. There's no AI screening them out for the most part, right? But there's a widespread belief.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And yet the solution to the problem is to introduce AI screening.
Be upfront with it. Be transparent about it. Yeah.
But that's it, right? I think we need to agree as a community that you can't have an AI fake person calling them that's trying to be a person. Like you got to be like, this is an AI. Like we're not. And I think it's about screening people in, not screening them out. Like I'm here to help screen you in. Let's talk about the things, right? That I think are the two things that we're missing. But I do think we have a battle with candidates right now who
the only company I know that actually is transparent in their hiring process of where AI touches them is Greenhouse. They do a really good job. If you have them on Greenhouse's website, they do an amazing job of explaining where AI will touch you. I have yet to see a Fortune 5000 company do that.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why.
You might see it soon, Tim. It might be rolling into an implementation coming soon. But
that's amazing. And I think we should really celebrate that when it happens, Shay, because it's one of those things where we have candidates believing AI is basically dispositioning them when it's actually a human that is. And it's a human that never looked at them either, by the way. AI would actually look at them.
It goes back to your question, Chris, about like, I mean, you could apply this not just to late stages, but if I were to use a late stage example, I mean, let's say you're using a highly automated process to get someone through, they're doing AI-based screening, you're getting them to an offer as fast as possible. If you use something that's highly automated like that, then the candidate is now ready to ask a lot of questions, right? Now they have a lot of questions maybe about the job. They want to ask about the benefits. They want to ask if, if you're at a startup in a tech role, you might be like, I need to learn a little bit more about the equity structure. And you've got some questions that you would normally then a recruiter has to get on and have kind of that during the offer, the post-offer conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, those
especially
follow-up communications. Yeah.
Yeah, it's follow-up, but it's also just like, hey, the person doesn't just have to take their benefits brochure and their offer letter and dump it into Chat GPT and try to get to the bottom of this. You'd actually build that into the knowledge base of the job and the offer and the company. And so I don't know, I just see there's a lot of value that you're right. It hasn't been focused on later stage in the process, but if you're thinking as a recruiter, but maybe some people would be like, that's really where recruiters need to live, is we're automating all the front end. Now I get to build the trust and close the deal. So we don't want AI there.
Yeah.
It's a really big challenge. I think the transparency piece is something that as organizations we need to get better at across the board. It's not just about that screening, transparency in the process, transparent. I miss when it was like LinkedIn used to do this, right? You're going to be this 312th person applying to this job. Like, actually, that's a helpful piece of information. Like, you should know that. And obviously it's not true because there's other people applying, but like,
imagine if every
transparent.
candidate knew what number they were in line.
Woo!
That would be
No, yeah.
mind-blowing for a lot of
You know
them.
what? The one thing I take a look is like we have this, again, I don't want to get into politics, but we have an administration that's kind of like told everybody, hey, you can't deal with D&I anymore, blah, blah, blah. If we go back 10 or 15 years ago when we first started this D&I conversation, it was really more about, hey, how do we hire better? And you're like, oh, well, be inclusive, expand the panels or the pools that you're fishing in, blah, blah, blah. Well, AI actually gives us the ability to screen and interview 100% of candidates that have applied. What better, more inclusive way to hire is that? And we're not even coming close to that. So do I really need to change or think about D&I? Like, no, just be more inclusive and let everybody have a shot that wants to come work for you, be a part of the process. And like, to me, that's like, it's a simple way to do this.
Shay,
Yeah, we talked about that. Everyone gets an interview, right? So
Shay, you and I were chatting last year about AI interviewing and the compliance and legalities around it, right? Because it's not one of the things I think that TA teams are faced with today is that candidates are mass applying, candidates are AI bot applying, whatever they're doing. There's no regulation, there's no compliance. They can do whatever they want. And as teams, we have both our hands tied behind our backs as the fire hose comes at us. So I remember I was chatting, we're talking about the legal team saying, well, there is something about AI doing it where it's got guardrails and it's recorded and it's transcribed and it's reviewable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's a great partner that we're working with, and there's lots out there in this field that you can do from a compliance perspective. But Fair Now, like one thing that I like about them is they introduced, pre-validation synthetic data, right? So we could say, hey, let's actually have our legal team define the biases that we want to validate against, that we want to look at, that they're concerned about, and let's run this through using all, previous candidate data and see exactly how it would screen and recommend them and do it out, see what our slate looks like compared to how the human reviewers, to Tim's point, non-review was doing, because we're only touching, 1% of overall applications. So there's a lot of great things out there now that I think legal and compliance teams are really excited about, that's getting them more behind AI, because when it was first all coming out, there was too much, right? That they're like, I don't know how we're, it's scary at face value. But I was like, now that there's more and more tools coming out in the AI community to say like, hey, you can put an ethical framework around this, you can put an audit framework around this, you can actually test and validate this stuff, and it's defensible. So now we actually get to prove what a lot of us were saying was like, we actually think this is more fair. Like, yep, there's a risk of bias, but now we get to prove and validate against it and put a stamp on it before we deploy it.
Well, there's a risk of bias before, right? That didn't go away.
There's always a risk, but before it was just kind of like, we know there's bias anecdotally. Now we can be like, let's actually track and see how the bias is for, here's the candidate pool versus actually the action that's happening in the system.
One of my favorite lines is from Amazon around, if you're going to build a product, make sure you build it with the press release in mind, right? If you're going to adopt a product, make sure that you have an ROI plan, or in this case, compliance plan on the other side. So if you understand what you're going to be measuring before you implement it, you have a much better chance of success in understanding how you're doing and adjusting course. Chris Wellington just jumped in and said, who's reviewing the compliance inputs? No one. It's actually a really good point, right? And it's worse than that, because compliance is not beholden to the vendor. Vendor's not responsible for your compliance.
Yeah, there's no
Unless-
compliance officer.
Well, we'll see. There's some lawsuits kind of playing that out.
For sure. For sure.
Workday may disagree with
Workday
that
may have
statement a
one,
little
yeah.
bit.
But today, today they are not, right? And you have to operate into that. So today,
For sure.
right? So I think that's an important part. So as you look at these things, it's funny. I had a phone call one day, this was about a year ago, from one of our customers, and she said to me, do I need a legal person that sits in my talent team now and a compliance person that sits in my talent team now, and really a software developer too? And I was like, you probably want to think about that. Because as talent leaders, you are now responsible for more and more that maybe before we either didn't think about or the spotlight wasn't on. But Shay, as you're looking at all these things, how are you thinking about the complexity of the legalities, the compliance, what tech can't do, it won't do, shouldn't do?
Yeah, we didn't go as far as putting legal people sitting in the TA function, but we have a strong partnership with our legal, cybersecurity, data privacy teams. Like Leah, you probably know this from our implementation. It's gotten even bigger now, but we have a really nice kind of like AI and just sort of data privacy and legal governance framework, since TA is one of the highest risk areas when it comes to legislation and risk and everything. Like we're just in constant communication. And so that's where that technology that I just mentioned came into play, where we're like, hey, we're doing a lot of meeting. You guys are giving us the components of what we need to consider. Hey, if you're going to implement this is what we need to be prepared for in case of an audit. So let's create that process. Like all of that is so time consuming. You feel like, does this just ruin the efficiency that we gained from what we were trying to implement? So that's where I'm really excited about the technology that's coming out now that's helping to aid in that, to say like, hey, as you are setting this up, as you are implementing or piloting something, we get to put in all those inputs, and it's automating in real time the way that you're actually deploying and tracking this. Legal has eyes on it, TA has eyes on it. We're all seeing the same information, and things get flagged in real time. So you're able to actually come in and say, here's what we need to target and fix, not just like, let's deploy it and hope for the best. And legal will come to us when there's a class action lawsuit.
Never when you want them to come to you.
Or an audit, or hopefully an audit before there's anything ever like that.
We all get to learn what collective action and class action, the difference being.
Yep.
We're nearing our time here. So I want to sort of circle back to where we began, which is all of this starts with a process that you have as a business. You can be a slightly unique special flower, Tim. Not everybody is, but your process is mostly consistent for your business and having it written down. But the other piece of with an end game in mind, right? Your process should get you to a place that's measurable, actionable. And as you make changes, you have to think about those things, right? So if there's a piece of advice for everybody as we walk out of this conversation, Tim, I'll start with you. What's your big takeaway around this challenge of scaling your business given the current world that we're in?
Don't write your process in stone. There's a million processes that can get you to the same end result. Be open to a lot of those. If you look at a piece of technology and you love it, but you hate the process, there's 10 other technologies that probably do the same thing. Find one that you like better. We see this all the time. Someone will go, we don't like our ATS. We need another ATS. All the ATSs do 90% of the same thing. It's like basically, so it's like, well, but maybe one of them is built on a process you'll like better for your company. That's fine if it gets to the same thing. But we get married to our process, and we're like, no, we're not changing. This is the process. You're like, why? Like, it's fine. Change your process. It's not going to kill you.
Might kill your recruiters though.
Maybe.
Shay.
I want to take a same approach, but instead of process, I would say like, when it comes to the technology that you're looking at, just like Tim said, you get so hung up on the process that you're used to. Like we run into this in our own right. It's like you're so used to a function of technology. Like I'll use just a really a dumb example, but let's say you are evaluating an ATS and a CRM, and you're like, oh, why you guys don't have a custom HTML builder for email, for our marketing emails? And they're like, yeah, because the vendor might come to you and say, we see the response rate of emails and the type of hiring that you're doing is really, really low. And we think you should focus on text. The conversion is much higher. So like what I've learned over time is saying, hey, a lot of these vendors are building things a certain way because they know from collective feedback of their clients and their customers what's working best. So like listen to their consultative feedback. Don't just say, no, you're going to build me this because we've always had this and I want it. And if you don't, I'm going to go pick another partner. So I would just put that out there. I'd just be like, if there's components of technology that are because of a process or just because you're used to them and it's the way you've always done things, just listen to them and reevaluate, and definitely use client references, and look at any new technology implementation as an opportunity to change your model, change your mindset, and adapt and say, hey, maybe we don't need to be doing that anymore. And we can just take this partner's advice and actually use it in a way that's going to best serve us, because it's worked so well and they have data to back it up from other clients that have already done this.
I like it. And good luck with everybody in all your AI evaluations. Maybe we should build a scorecard for everyone.
Right.
We'll be back next month. Feel free to reach out. I put both Tim and Shay's information, their LinkedIn, right into the chat. Feel free to connect with them. If you guys have any other outstanding thoughts, please let us know. Great to chat with all of you guys, and have a fabulous Wednesday afternoon.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Leah.